Hi, everybody. Welcome. Also, welcome my fantastic friends and colleagues, Dr. Angela Puka, Zevi, on the road to Brooklyn and in the fine city of Londonium. How are you guys? How's life?
Yeah, I'm in my hotel room, so I hope that everything is working fine because I'm on a tablet and there's no table here. But I'm excited because tomorrow I'm gonna give a talk at the Witch Fest in London, so that's why I'm in a hotel room now. So tomorrow is gonna be a long and busy day, and I'll also get to see some cool bands that are famous in the pagan community, like the Incubus, Succubus, and Damned Apart that will be playing tomorrow night. So it's gonna be a long day, and I'll also be meeting Ron Hutton. He's also giving a talk on Stonehenge, whereas my talk is on chaos magic. So if any of you guys are in London and attending the Witch Fest, come and say hi.
Nice. If you're in London, come see Angela and Ronald Hutton. Uh, and folks may know Zevi was kind of living with me, living with us and the fam for like a month last month. It was
Not
great.
anymore. Not anymore. Wait,
No,
there's
Zevi is a Rolling Stone. He's moved on to bigger and better things. But Zevi, how
It's
you
such a
doing?
wonderful time. I'm doing well. It's such a wonderful time, Justin, with you and the fam, and I really do hope to be back in not too far in the future. I also love that. Firstly, it's just a delight to be here celebrating you, a close friend and colleague, for the amazing work that you've done and doing, and just a moment to we spend a lot of time doing the work and and to be able to step back and look at the work and appreciate it and appreciate our colleagues doing the work is such like it really fills my heart with a lot of warmth. And I love that we're joining from like random places. Dr. Puka, Angela, our friend here is calling from her iPad in a hotel room. I'm here on the road. It's like wherever we are, we call in, we stop what we're doing to celebrate. And there's something about how precarious the celebration is that adds to it in some way. So just a delight to be here, and I hope that some of our other fine colleagues will join us to celebrate you as well, Sir Justin.
Yeah, hopefully. I think some other folks said they might be able just to jump in for a minute to say hi. But yeah,
congratulations, Justin.
thank you, Angela. Thank you. What an absolutely bizarre. I was talking about this the other night with a friend of mine, just like how completely bizarre it is that something so niche could get this popular. But yeah, I'm super happy that it has, and I hope I can continue doing this work of providing this kind of material. And of course, folks, if you're not already subscribed to Angela's channel and Zevi's channel, make sure you go run and do that. They're also producing amazing, fine content, and it's really an honor and a privilege to know you guys and work together and be friends and just like hang out. It's just really nice that we have such a great community. And again, not only that, but these platform can be so alienating in so many ways that it's amazing that we've managed to bridge the gap and really build what I think will be lifelong relationships, um, which is just really amazing. I'm really thankful for that. Really thankful for that.
Yeah,
So
me too. I think that's really important. But clearly, people love your work, so I'm sure that you will continue to do this. You always do so much anyway, even outside.
yeah, yeah, I'm glad people like it, and and we also just glad it's really it's serving people. That's what I'm really happy for. That it serves. Just I love getting comments like, "Oh, this is part of my like spiritual path," and it serves people in that way. Or other people are like, "No, I'm a dungeon master, and it like serves me to build Dungeons and Dragons games," or "I'm a fantasy writer and it helps with this," um, or "I'm just a historian and no one covers this stuff in quite the same way." So it's just nice to know that you can serve different communities and be able to provide that content for those communities, which is really great.
I think it's really astounding, as I was saying, that so many people love this stuff. I mean, we love it and we take that for granted. And I mean, myself at least, we got into this because we love it, and we wanted to find people to talk to about it. And I don't know if I could have ever imagined just the amounts of people that love this stuff too, and were interested in coming into community around it. And that it just blows my mind.
Yeah, no, it's you don't know. You guess you don't really realize how many people there are out there like you, which is a nice reminder. Again, because we can. I don't know how you guys. It often can feel like we're quite alone in some ways, but then you like get to go, meet other folks like y'all, and just like other folks on the channel, or the talk I had with Professor Walter Hanegraaff just got posted today by the Embassy of the Free Mind. Which, if you haven't seen it yet, it's you should check it out. But just being able to meet all the people that we met at in Amsterdam and all that, it was just amazing. It's just been an amazing journey so far. So yeah. So who knows going next? I have decided actually though that I'm gonna be done with my break and come back to making content for next week. So I'm like already gearing up for next week's episode.
What are we looking forward to, Justin? Will you give us some teasers for the audience here?
Yeah, I'll tell you what it is. Every year I do like a sort of colonial America episode, sort of colonial American occultism, which I don't know why I decided to do that, but I've decided to do that. And one of the things I think I'm gonna cover is the Salem witch trials, which have been covered to the nth degree on every other channel. So I'm not going to cover them. But what I'm interested in, I think what I'm going to cover is that the three people at the very center of the beginning of the outbreak of the witch craze, Tituba, Abigail Williams, and the Paris girl. What's interesting about them is none of them were killed, and they all lived. And what happened to them is interesting. Like, they're the ones who basically started the first accusations, they're the first confessions, and yet all of them survived. And with only one of three do we know what happened to them. So I'm going to explore what happened to the first three people at the center of the Salem witch trials. The two of which just vanish completely. They just completely go. We have no idea what happens to them. So I'm going to be covering that, which I think is interesting. That the Salem witch trials are so. I mean, there's movies about them, plays about them. Everyone knows a lot about them, and yet the three people at the very beginning of the trials, and Tituba especially, she vanishes out of history despite confessing. She's not indicted. She's held in jail for 13 months, but she's never indicted, and none of them are executed. So that's what it'll be about, sort of the afterlife of the Salem witch trials.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is. Because I think everyone just assumes they all got killed, but they didn't. They survived. So yeah, that'll be what it's about. Then after that, I think I might do something on John Dee's Heptarchia Mystica. So, but yeah, that's sort of the stuff in the thing. So, what are you guys working on? If you don't mind saying.
In terms of for YouTube or generally?
Yeah, whatever you want to share.
So I was asked to give lectures at the University of Rome. So that's another thing that I've got to do in December. So yeah, I have a lot of work going on both academically and for the YouTube channel. For the YouTube channel, I will release tomorrow my talk at the Scottish Pagan Federation conference from last week in Glasgow, which is on the historical misconceptions in paganism. And it was funny when I went there because, when a bunch of pagans and a lot of people said, "You're really brave coming here and telling these people that, Wicca is not the oldest religion," all of that. But yeah, I think it went down reasonably well. And then next week I'm gonna release the talk from tomorrow, which is going to be on chaos magic. And I don't think that I have content planned further than 2 weeks. I have a collaboration with Dr. Henry in December on Isis, the cult of Isis. In my case, it would be more how it developed in contemporary Western esotericism. So that's another thing that I will definitely be working on in terms of doing research.
Are those ideas still prevalent? Like that Wicca is the oldest religion in the world, or I mean, I understand that those ideas had currency in the 80s and maybe the 90s, but like since Ronald Hutton, I can't imagine since Ronald Hutton's published his books, I can't imagine anyone really holding to those beliefs
That-
any further.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's one that people have conflicting feelings on apparently, because I thought it was very interesting because there was one man in the audience last week that said, don't you think that pagans now are familiar with these concepts? And then all the other questions were negating what he had just said. So I think that it's a bit mixed. I have interviewed famous American priestesses on my YouTube channel who were saying that Wicca is the oldest religion. I didn't, I was not challenging them, because when I interview people and practitioners and pagans, I just allow them space.
Sure.
And obviously people should know that that's their opinion and not my own, and I'm not endorsing what they say. But I was surprised, for instance, that they are quite popular. They've written dozens of books. They've been very influential, and still in 2023, or was it 2022, they would say, oh, because Wicca is the oldest religion. So it's like, the answer to your question is it depends. I think that there are some pagans that are highly educated and are aware of the historical misconceptions and have adjusted in a way their belief system, because paganism is experience first and belief after anyway, so it's not even something that should be that controversial. But there are other people that I think that genuinely find it difficult to distinguish between historical fact and belief. It's like they just don't, they just can't. I don't know, some of the conversations that I had made me think that for some people it's just very difficult to grasp the difference between the two.
Yeah, it's again, it's interesting. Sort of like sort of first day religious studies classes. You're like, yeah, there's a difference between these things, and yeah, it's interesting what sticks and what doesn't. But it's funny because I'm reading. When Zevi was here, I've been reading a ton about Chateauhoyuk and sort of like the big religious symposium that came out of the studies of Chateauhoyuk. And it's just interesting talking, sort of thinking about the earliest religion, because in some sense, Chateauhoyuk and Göbekli Tepe are our earliest religious sites that have significant amounts of data that we can draw from. And even that data, that early on the first Malart first said, oh, they worship a kind of a panther goddess, and then they did more excavations, and turns out those goddesses only show up very late in Chateauhoyuk and only in grain bins. They're just thrown away, and it turns out that's probably not at all right. That this goddess religion probably didn't exist, and so now there's a whole renovation going on about what they think is going on at Chateauhoyuk. So. And ditto Göbekli Tepe, with all the decapitated people, which is really weird. So yeah, the headless god may have been a pretty early religion of some kind. It might throw back to my Bataille. Philip.
Hi.
Philip.
Welcoming Philip. Hey Philip, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Congratulations, Justin.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that. It's great to have
Hi,
the
Justin.
gang back. I feel like we're in Malmo.
Yes.
being the bad kids who are too cool for school, like too cool for conferences. We sit in the lobby and just be cool by ourselves.
We were
first
cool.
encounter was on what was it, that thing, that plastic donut?
Oh, outside, you mean? Just
Yeah.
some ugly kind of seating space. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I remember it as
University
the
stuff.
plastic donut where the four of us met for the first time.
The Swedes in
And
there.
it was very small.
Yeah. It was.
It was made by IKEA.
Probably.
Of course. In Sweden.
No, but we were just talking about the oldest religion in the world, and I've been reading a lot about Chateauhoyuk and sort of the new historiography coming out of Chateauhoyuk, which is, I think it's really interesting. It's really cool when you have these like multidisciplinary people, like archaeologists, theologians, religious studies people, anthropologists, like all coming together on site in Turkey,
Mhm.
and just like working for 3 years. And then they have this symposium at the end of the 3 years, and basically they publish where they all land. And they don't agree by any stretch of the imagination, as you can imagine. But it is just an interesting, like, to think about, like, doing the one thing for 3 years and being in conversation with the same people for 3 years, and them all coming together from your various fields and like throwing your best idea about what might be going on here. It's just, I don't know. I just love those kinds of projects. That's the kind of projects I dream about being a part of.
Yeah. It's very exciting.
I have a question for you, Justin, because there's a project that you've been a part of for the past 4 years or so. And I also don't know when my internet's going to cut out here, so I'm going to try and ask this before that happens. It's been about 4 years, 500,000 subscribers, which we're celebrating today, 22 million views. I'm wondering what reflections you have from the time of doing that, and what you've gleaned, what you've learned, what's been surprising, what's been challenging and rewarding. I'd love to hear a bit of that.
Yeah. I think the thing that's been the most surprising is how kind everyone is in general. Of course, there's always nasty comments, but I guess I grew up on the days of, like, you know, sort of the late 80s, early 90s on the internet, where everybody was mean. It just was like being mean was what you did on the internet. And I guess what I've come away with is just how, like, kind the audience is, how kind commenters are, how kind, like, you guys are, like, reaching out to scholars and practitioners. People are just really happy and willing and interesting to engage. That's the thing that's been the most surprising, because I really thought that when I signed up for this YouTube thing, it was just going to be like a constant onslaught of, like, trolls and, you know, whatever. But overwhelmingly, it's just been, like, kind, thoughtful, generous, really wonderful people. So I guess that's the big surprising thing, and it's a really welcome surprise. I think also just all of our projects together really show that, you know, there's this constant lie, at least we hear in America, that no one cares about the liberal arts, no one cares about religious studies. There's this constant, you hear this, like, oh, it's no, we can't fund these departments because no one's interested in this stuff. And the fact that between us and Andrew and other channels like ours, that there are millions of people and tens of millions of views, show that that's just not true. That what's clearly the case is that people are desperately interested in reliable information, especially about religion, especially about fringe religion. And the fact that we get to work together to provide that information has just been, like, a big blessing for me. And I don't know, and again, I'm not sure how it feels for you guys, but I'm a bit older than all of you. I've been doing this for a minute, learning all this stuff for a while, and to finally find an outlet where I can do it and make a living doing it has really been a blessing. So yeah, it's just overwhelmingly how much of a positive experience it's been. It has its own challenges, of course, like any job has its challenges, but I feel very lucky to do what I do, and I feel very blessed to be able to do it with an audience like I have, and also with colleagues like you guys.
What was the biggest challenge then?
The biggest challenge is still the biggest challenge. Sitting in front of a camera and talking. I hate cameras. I can so easily be in a room of, like, hundreds of people and be very jocular and very, like, it's so easy for me to do that. But to sit down alone in a room with a camera is just the most unnatural, unnerving thing. It's like, I don't get stage fright. I could be in a room with 10,000 people and I don't think I'd feel the slightest bit of stage fright. But it's still like the first words out of my mouth when I hit play when I hear the ding on the camera rolling, I feel like a complete imbecile. So yeah, I think what's most difficult is that, because the material writes itself. It's really easy and great and fun. But you know, that's I don't know, for me the biggest challenge is just that side of things. I don't know. You guys, what are the challenges that you think that most people don't see, that are on the viewing end of things? What are the kind of challenges you think? What do you think would be surprising for people to learn?
I mean, I would just add here that for Justin, for you, the scripts write itself. Some of us have, you know, not all the horsepower under the hood that Justin's packing. We actually have to sit down and and think and read and write. And for me, a lot of work goes into that. And hanging out with you, Justin, was both delightful as a friend and as a peer and colleague. The mental exercise of keeping up with you is always a delightful challenge, and something which certainly gives me a lot to aspire to and learn from. I think something which perhaps we know quite well, which is a very painful part of the challenge, which most people don't see because they only see like the polished, finished product that goes out. Like how many times we sat down to record and then realized that we didn't hit record, or that there was something interfering with the mic, or that we had to go down and do the whole thing again. And like sort of these sunken hours and it takes so much, you put so much heart and energy and presence into it, and then like it just doesn't even go. And for me, I feel like just like a pain point, because it happened to me just this week again, and like just wanting to somehow like pass that on to the audience, be like, hey, there's so much effort and so much love that goes into this, even parts that don't reach you. So maybe that would be my gripe for the week.
Oh yeah, I've definitely like not put my mic on, recorded like 20 minutes, and like, all right, well, that was a good first take.
That kind of happened to me with the Neoplatonism episode. It wasn't that my mic wasn't on, but there was a constant like hum in the background throughout the whole recording, and that was a long video and a tough
Right,
one. So
it was.
That happens sometimes, and it sucks. I also liked another comment here in the comment section said, let me find it, that the worst thing would be to just listen to yourself as you're editing, and that's kind of true.
Oh,
also.
yes.
You get sick of yourself. Shut up. But it's also one of the good things, because that's how, at least for me, I learn a lot better when I have to listen to it over and over again. So I memorize this stuff better, but it's also kind of exhausting to just hear and see yourself all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely happened to me to re-record multiple times. In fact, the video on whether Heka and Hecate are related, that was filmed. That was the third attempt. So I don't know if I look pissed off in that video, but I was inside.
You're just like screaming at the mic.
Yeah, I usually my problems are with the microphone because I had to definitely upgrade my equipment because it wouldn't cope with the microphone, the one that Philip is using. So I would get like a recording with parts that were muted. It was very bizarre. Then I realized that it was my computer, so it was a bit of a mess. But I also, another challenge for me, as you guys were saying, is looking back at the footage and myself and re-listening to myself. And I know that sometimes I get comments of people complaining about the cuts on my videos. I wouldn't want those cuts either, but unfortunately I'm not able to say things properly the first time. So I get so annoyed with myself when I look at this. Why couldn't I say that properly? It really annoys me because it's like the words in my mouth just get so
And also, I mean, again, you should be more kind to yourself, Angela. You're also like working a second language and working in a very technical field in a second language. I mean, it's like doubly difficult. So
True.
Yeah.
I hope someone from Rhode is listening in. They reach out to sponsor us with a reliable microphones or something. I think it's interesting as well. I think like in the space of education and content creation, like we hear a lot about creator burnout and educator burnout, and I think that's something that we all have to take time to make sure that we have the resources to be there for others. But I think for me, what's been more than burnout, which has been really challenging, has been, and with something that you touched upon just earlier, Justin, is the isolation of doing it. Like we're here interacting with large swaths of populations that are fascinated in this material, which is such an honor and privilege, and yet we brainstorm alone, we write alone, we film alone, we edit alone, we publish alone, we produce alone. Like it's quite lonely work in front of a screen or camera. And for me, that's been, I think, the most challenging and the biggest antidote has been doing things like this, where we get to hang out both virtually and in person, and have a space where we can feel like we actually do have people that care about us in this space, and have colleagues, have peers that we can turn to for support, for celebration, for ideas. And I think that like as a community of educators and creators, we do have to find ways to make that a real community where we can feel like we're not doing this in the void of the internet, which is so designed to to keep people apart, unfortunately, which is ironic. But for me, that's been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, for sure. That's I think that's something we can all sympathize with. That this job can be pretty lonely sometimes, and actually, like before I used to work, I had a job, as you guys know. I worked at a school before. Now I don't. So my days are just, because my wife is working also. So I'm just walking to like a local cafe and I'm writing by myself, and then I come home and I edit the videos, and after like 2 weeks of that, it can get pretty lonely. So it's important to have this kind of community and these kinds of contexts where we can hang out together.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, would you guys enjoy the success you've had on YouTube as much if you didn't had, the community, like us, for instance?
No, probably not.
Yeah, no, I think that insofar as any of us are successful, it's because we've all worked together. I think that's been a big part of our success. Yeah, but I think if I were just doing this by myself, no, it would not be terribly rewarding. I mean, it would be rewarding in some respects, but I don't know that it would. Yeah, I don't know that it would be. It would not be as like I would not be able to keep up the pace because of like the burnout feeling would be strong enough that I would be like, okay, take a lot more breaks.
Yeah. At the same time, it's sometimes it feels bad to complain, because I also had a moment the other week or a few weeks ago, and I was like, I get to wake up and read Porphyry and then go write about vampires, and that's my job. And that's kind of awesome.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. Yeah. You have to be careful. And this is the thing I was telling Zevi when Zevi was here. It was really great to be able to hang out because we could talk shop about our job. But yeah, it's really, you have to be careful who you complain to. It can look really, really privileged. And again, I'm not, even those things are just like, they're not that bad. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to getting back into the saddle of recording and writing. I'm looking forward to have a list of episodes that'll definitely get me through the year. There's a bunch of stuff I want to work on anyway, so I'm looking forward to getting back into writing that stuff. And yeah, it's been nice to have a few weeks off. But yeah, one of the things that allowed me to do is get my rare book catalog out, which was a lot of fun. And it's really, I love, working on these rare books. This is a copy of Suitor Dionysius from 1557. It's like really cool to, be able to make these kind of books available for folks. So yeah, folks haven't checked out the rare book catalog, make sure you check it out over at the website. It's it's neat to be able to handle some of these books. In fact, one of the books I got from my own personal collection, I just got in a couple days ago, is I think you guys will appreciate this, and maybe folks in the audience will too. Is this is an edition from 17. I think 77 from the 18th century, but sure, Angela reads Latin, so
Index Librorum, yeah, Benedicti 15, yeah, sorry, 14.
Yeah, Benedictus the 14th. But yeah, it says this is a copy of the Index Prohibitorum. This is all the books that are banned that were banned at the time by the Catholic Church.
They would probably still ban them.
Well, the index was lifted in the 70s, so nothing is technically banned anymore. But
yeah, it was a joke about Italy.
Oh, they're still banned. Yeah. But it is neat, like flipping through here and like seeing who's on the list. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but yeah, there's a. I don't know if the thing will pick it up, but there's Agrippa, Cornelius Agrippa's name, and it just says everything's banned. You're not allowed to read anything by him. So it's a neat book. It's just like basically this is content for esoterica. Just pick a random book out of here and make an episode about it. So it's neat to have a copy of you know, the index. This is right before right before Kant got on it. So it's interesting who's on here already. Spinoza's on here. So it's already late enough that Spinoza's on the index. Kant's not on it. Kant isn't on it yet, but he will be eventually. Which is just funny. You would never think of someone as like Kant getting put on the index prohibitorum, but he was right there next to Agrippa and, you know, any other so-called heretics.
What do you have
Yeah.
coming up, Justin, on your channel?
So I mentioned earlier, I'm going to do an episode next week on the three girls that sort of started the Salem witch trials. I was mentioning to Angela and Zevi that we know the story at some level. It's a pretty famous story, but folks often don't know what happened to those three women, that they survived. They were among the three they were among the ones that weren't killed. And so it's sort of tracing out what happened to them when the dust settled, which is, I think, fascinating. I just find it interesting that the women that kicked it off, and it was crazy. I was when I was in Salem for Andy Atanche Films' release of the Sudbury Devil. I made the trek. I had a car, luckily, and so I made the trek out to Danvers, which is outside of Salem, which is where Salem Village was, and the archaeological ruins of the Paris house where Tituba and Abigail Williams lived. It's there, and you can sit. I sat there in the basement of the ruins of the house, and there's something really, and it's just in the middle of a neighborhood now. So it's just like you're just sort of in the backyard of someone's house, and you can sit down in basically the ruins of the house, and then you can walk across, basically across the street to the remains of the Gathering House where they first interrogated the witches publicly. And it is weird to, because if you go to Salem, Massachusetts, Essex Street is the main drag where all the Salem witch stuff happens. It's like the Mardi Gras of witch stuff. But I was out there by myself for probably half an hour, and I never saw another person. Which is so, I don't know. There's something very unnerving about being in the ruins of where it all started. I don't know. Being that close to history sometimes is very unnerving to me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But Angela, when you were in Ireland, did you go to like Newgrange and Knowth and all that?
I went to Newgrange, yes. And yeah, we didn't have much, a lot of time to do lots of things, because the main thing was the Bealtaine Fire Festival at Uisneach, which is in the heart of Ireland. And then we also went to Newgrange and to this church that I always forget the name of, but it has the oldest, the Celtic crosses.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I was wondering. I have like Neolithic stuff on the mind. I'm reading a cool book about sort of there's a 2-volume set of the Paleolithic mind and the Neolithic mind, and it's written by neurologists and philosophers and religious studies people about what they think was going on and sort of in the minds of folks in these places like Newgrange and Göbekli Tepe and Stonehenge and the big caves and like Lascaux and Chauvet Cave in France and stuff. It's interesting. I'm just fascinated by that stuff these days. It's like what I've been spending most of my time reading during my break.
Have you guys, and this is a question for everybody, has there ever been a time during the years you've been working on your channel that you thought about quitting?
I haven't. No. I really started this whole project with the intention of making it into a job, like a career. So I'm very lucky in that. To me, it's like a job. It's like I work on the channel. I do the things I need to do. And when I'm done with it, I'm done with it for the day. I don't feel the need to like engage with it beyond that. So I think that's good for my mental health, because it means that I have like really strong work-life balance, that once I'm done with an episode for the week, I'm checked out and go do something else. So But no, I never thought about quitting. I definitely think about a lot about how to expand the project in ways that aren't just YouTube. That to me matters a lot.
How do you think we could do that?
I don't know, like this, theorizing around in-person stuff, like, just doing individual talks. I'm sort of scheduled to do some like individual talks with like Freemason lodges and other kinds of organizations like that. Expanding to this rare book business, just sort of really trying to think about how to, think about what I'm doing outside of the scope of just YouTube. But luckily also I don't feel like, I don't think YouTube's going to go anywhere anytime soon, at least. So I feel like I have some sense of how to expand things. The thing that I do not want to expand on is social media. That is the opposite direction of the direction that I want to go.
Do you ever worry that if YouTube, for some reason shuts down, or I don't know, gets acquired by Elon Musk or whatever, are you ever worried about potential big changes like that?
Sure. I mean, people sometimes say, isn't YouTube like unstable? And I'm like, sure, it's unstable, but so is like
any job is unstable.
Yeah,
so.
any job. This economy is completely unstable. So the instability of it doesn't really bother me. And or it doesn't bother me any more than it would bother me about anything else. But also there are other platforms. If YouTube just like, I don't know, crap the bed, then you could always go to Nebula, or you could, there's lots of other platforms that we could explore for doing this kind of project. So yeah, I'm not super concerned about that, but yeah, I do not want to do whatever direction I want to go. I don't want to go the direction of social media. Another direction actually I do want to go. And speaking of that, is I want to do some like educational tourism, I guess is the word.
Yeah, I'd like to.
I think we could do that. I think that would be a thing we could all work together on. Maybe is like, how cool would it be to like go to Spain and like learn about Kabbalah, take a Kabbalah class in Spain where it was invented? Like, there's something about seeing. I remember the first time where I saw the fountain that was built in the 12th century, and you can see the exact same fountain that was in the city where the Zohar was being written. And you see in the Zohar, they often describe the Sfirot as like a fountain with all kinds of water dropping down from level to level. And you're like, can sit there and think to yourself, it was that fountain. Like that was the fountain that like Moshe de Leon or whatever was looking at. And again, I'm not sure how much of a romantic I am, but there's something so concrete about that.
I was just thinking you're such a historical materialist.
Yeah, I'm very like, it really is like very like the stones really matter to me.
Yeah, like thinking about the material there that caused history to happen, even in a more metaphysical sense.
Yeah, but I would love to do that. I'd love to like do like a study of Hermeticism like in Alexandria, or to your home country, like Naples. You can just pick a cultist out of the hat.
Yes.
You can Della Porta or whoever.
Bruno Campanelli.
Yeah, Bruno. So I think there's something about, to me at least, there's something about studying and learning this material, not on the internet for one, in person, and not only in person, but in situ. And I really do buy that there's a community building part of that. There's an intellectual building part of that. There's like it's concrete in a way that isn't, I think, important. So there's something like educational tourism thing that I want to begin planning. And I don't know what that'll look like, but I would love to be able to do that kind of.
I like that. Yeah.
So that's an idea. That's an idea I've had. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but
it's a very good idea. I've had similar thoughts, so we should keep this discussion going sometime.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it could be, yeah.
Like the Religion TubeCon, we can have lots of things to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just like having, again, like just like a month of something, I don't know. And also just like I'm very much interested in traveling. It's just fun. It's good for my mind, good for my soul to travel. So, but no, you guys, to extend the question to, you guys ever thought about quitting or doing something different or changing things significantly?
I have a similar answer to you. I think that I did start the channel in 2018, and there was a period for like most of 2019 where I didn't post anything, and I'd basically sort of not necessarily given up, but it was irrelevant for a while. But then when I started up again properly in 2020, probably partly because of the pandemic, and that's when I really like committed to it. Since then, I've never really thought about quitting. But like you guys talked about, also I've also definitely thought about, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna expand it beyond YouTube? What happens if YouTube, like you said, closed down or whatever? Definitely those kinds of ideas, and I'm probably not going to be making YouTube videos for the rest of my life. So, like, what's the long-term plan? Because I want to keep doing this stuff, but YouTube as a platform is limited, especially time-wise into the future. So, I don't know, but no, I've always been very committed to doing this stuff since I started, I would say.
I think that I've always been committed.
Uh-oh. Angela froze. Maybe she'll come back in a
I
moment.
thought I lost you guys.
No. I think it was Angela that froze. She'll come back. Zevi, your thoughts?
I can share something until we get Angela back. Oh, I think she might be returning. There she is.
Sorry, guys. I think it's the hotel connection that is not that great. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
You're no longer frozen.
Yeah, I was saying that for me, I'm very passionate about it. My worry has always been whether it could be sustainable, because I don't have, big numbers yet. So the project really sustains on the patrons, and you can have fluctuations with that. So there have been times when I thought maybe I should have, also something else in case the patronage gets below a certain point. So I think that I've had more concerns about the instability, but not in terms of whether I was committed to doing it or want to do it, because I definitely want to do it.
Yeah, we just got to figure out a way to get more people to support you guys. That's, I mean, again, because we have, Philip and I and other folks have larger audiences. I just like, it's the algorithm is a capricious god, and as much as we can like push people in your direction, it doesn't seem like it has that much of an impact in many ways. I don't know. It's kind of crappy. I feel like, again, there's like success guilt, where like, you feel like I haven't done any more work, or I'm not any smarter. I'm not, you guys, it's just, it's kind of crappy because of the algorithm. But yeah, we got to find a way to make sure that we work together more and make sure to get you guys further,
but
further exposure.
You shouldn't have success guilt, because I think that your work is great. So yeah, the algorithm, but perhaps people just love what you do more, and that's okay. I mean, you shouldn't feel guilty to be good at what you do.
Well, it's not that, but it's just like, like you want your friends to.
That's love.
The best success is success shared, and so you want your friends to enjoy the same success. But yeah, also, like I said, I think, yeah, I'm not falsely humble. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. But I mean, also, you're doing a great job. Zevi's doing a great job. But like, I want I want that to be reflected in both you to be able to continue doing that financially, but also that reflected in in channel growth that's fair. But yeah, it's not guilt in the sense, but it's like, hold on, how let's don't be navel gazing. Like, how do you support your people that you care about, and and also support the work you're doing, because you're doing amazing work, and I want to I want that work to have the impact it needs to have.
Thank you. That's lovely. I always appreciate the fact that you guys always, we all give us each other shout outs on our channels and patrons and stuff. So I appreciate that. And it's the same for me. I always want all of you guys to be successful, because the question that I asked earlier about whether you would have enjoyed the success you've had without this community, I think it was coming from the fact that personally, in general, when I achieve something in life, if I don't have somebody to share that joy with, it doesn't feel like anything. So I don't know if it's me, but it's just empty. Unless you have somebody that is there with you to be joyful with you. So, but yeah, for me, it's really like that. So that's why I really enjoy having this community with you guys, because it makes every success feel more joyful. And so should, today for Justin, for his achievement of 500,000. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I totally agree, Angela, that it would be completely, it would be just a number if it weren't for and as soon as I hit the number, I was like, oh, well, what do? I want to reach out to my friends and hang out with my friends. Like, that's what I want to do to celebrate it. That's what matters. So.
It's really true. It's really true. It's like the sense of like a joy shared is doubled and a sorrow shared is halved. Yeah. And I really feel that. And it's really something special to be able to celebrate each other's celebrations and to salute each other's work, and to acknowledge like the real impact, like the real impact of like real people really engaging with this material, and in a total variety of ways. I mean, so many people are coming to the audience for so many different reasons, and each one of them coming away with something of so much value, and to really salute that, and there's something really magnificent about that.
Hey guys, I'm Andy. What's up?
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, folks may know Andy from Atunche Films. Like, Andy and I have worked together on our shared love of 17th, 18th century demonology. And also, Andy, I didn't mention it. We're also not so secretly working on a screenplay.
We are, yeah.
I have to say, Andy, I read the first draft. I was solo with the kids this week, so I didn't have a lot of time. But I have to say, there's something like really surreal about seeing your ideas like on paper, and like it looks really awesome. I don't know. I'm really excited.
Nice.
About this.
Yeah, in a good way, I hope. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Well, first of all, Justin, congrats, dude. 500,000. Like, oh my God, what an amazing accomplishment, dude! I'm so happy for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that must be surreal.
Yes, it's very. My brother was like mentioning, because my brother's basically the whole reason why this channel exists. He was like goading me on for years to do this, but yeah, my brother was just like, "Where are these people? Where are 500,000 people who watch this stuff?" And the answer is, I don't know. But I'm really happy that it worked out. And you were mentioning earlier, Andy, like just like being able to meet cool people online, and like I don't know, like make friendships over this medium has just been fantastic. Like having Zevi over at the house. You got to hang out with you just recently when you were in town. Like work together on this like screenplay. It's just like a hilarious things I would never imagine possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and by the way, Philip and Dr. Puka, I've seen your work, Zevi. I gotta catch up on your stuff, man. But yeah, I'm a fan of both of you, and hopefully all three of you soon. But yeah, I just appreciate what y'all do. I was actually watching one of Philip's videos just last week, actually, and enjoying it thoroughly. And yeah, it's interesting. I think like I'm kind of I'm not necessarily in sort of the religion tube sphere necessarily, but I really appreciate what you guys do, because it's as you no doubt know, you just search this stuff, right? As just somebody who's curious about, like, oh, I wonder what Christian mysticism is all about. And there's just, one kind of academic video that actually does tell you what's going on, and then it's just blah of just the nonsense, right? And agendas and craziness. So that's why it's so valuable to have academics, experts in religion and the history of religion, kind of doing what y'all do publicly. Because just as somebody whose area of expertise is not that, but who has kind of a layperson's interest in it, it's been incredibly valuable to me, just as a curious person and as a fan, to be able to do that. So yeah, I appreciate y'all a lot.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And the feeling is definitely mutual. I've appreciated your work for many years, even since before I started making videos. So
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
the feeling
Nice.
is
Nice.
Mm.
And you guys are much more on the filmmaking side of things, which is great. Again, like really learning a bunch from you guys. I've also got a question in the chat for you, Andy. Sudbury Devil,
Oh, yeah.
available in France.
Yeah. So we thanks for your interest, Martin. And it's going to be awesome. And the French are going to love it. Actually, I think they might actually have it might connect with it quite a bit more than a lot of prudish Americans have. But I don't know. We're actively working on it. We're going to get a streaming release of some kind. I don't want to necessarily say too much publicly, but we're working on it. We're trying our best. There's a couple options that we're going to go through, but it's weird because I for those of you who don't know, who might be watching, or for you guys, so I made this film, this independent film, and I'm kind of doing it in a very unconventional way. Like because I kind of already have a bit of a YouTube audience, I've been sort of essentially just approaching just indie theaters and music venues, and we did a couple of vegan restaurants in Oklahoma and Missouri. You know what I mean? They just have a space, and just said, "Hey, would you like to make like a little bit of money, and I could screen my film, and all that kind of stuff." And so we've been doing it very sort of in this very unconventional kind of way. So it's all a bit of a question mark, right? It's I wish I had a release date. I don't, unfortunately, yet, but I am working to get it very hard to get it as quickly as possible out. And again, thank you so much for your interest. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a hit in France for sure. Yeah, again, not to maybe say too much, before before it comes out of the oven. But the script that Justin and I are currently working on is really exciting, and it's going to be awesome. And it's about it's set around 1600 in Prague, and it's about an alchemist, or more accurately, several alchemists. And it's a period in history that I definitely am learning a lot more about now, and of course that Justin has been interested in since he was a wee lad, doing questionable chemical experiments without adult supervision, and it's going to be awesome. It's hopefully we can make it one day. I mean, that would be amazing.
It would be, and again, I think that what's really cool about it is the combination of like your eye as a filmmaker and me coming in with more of the historical alchemical stuff. If we get to make it, it will be the first time I think alchemy is historically accurately depicted on screen, which would be such a cool thing to be able to do, like to be able to take an esoteric topic that's never been covered accurately on screen, and then really center that process like in a movie would be so much fun. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be awesome. It would be awesome.
So
so many projects.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, tell me about it. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys know. I mean, it's it's with the with YouTube. I mean, you both, I guess Philip maybe stepped out, but you both must be. I know it's true for Justin and I. We've talked about it, but you must be just brimming with ideas. It's like, right? I mean, there's just so many sort of topics in the history of magic and the history of religion that just have gotten no scholarly treatment, or very limited, or very just kind of hard to find scholarly treatment, right? And just kind of bringing that to the public for the first time. I mean, the list must be endless, right?
Yes, that's why I find it funny when people say, "Are you not afraid that you're going to run out of ideas?" And it's like, What? I run out of time, not out of ideas.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Same here. Yeah. When people ask that question of me, I laugh. Like there is the amount of things the list of things that I want to cover is just unending.
Yeah.
No, you have I mean, Zevi, you have an actual list, right? Like you have a master list of like many pages of just things that you want to do, right?
Yeah, I keep a list, and then, I mean, I don't think I'll be able to get to maybe even half of them, no matter how much time I spend. But certainly, like the ideas that keep coming back to me and that like keep surfacing on the list are ones which then when I do have the time to do something next, I go to that. But yeah, there's certainly no lack there. But I really appreciate, Andy, what you were saying there about combating how much like misinformation there is out there on these subjects, and like how, as you're saying, Justin, these ideas and these subjects are so important to people. And although we talk about these, this myth of secularization and the lack of importance of religiosity in contemporary society, clearly, that's far from the case. And as you're saying, Andy, if we're not going to be producing content that's reliable and scholarly and balanced and thoughtful, then that void will be filled, and it's going to be filled by people with all kinds of who knows what crazy agendas. And I mean, the academics are doing really important work, but someone has to take that and then bring it to the public. And there's that work is really, really incredible, and it's a delight to be doing it alongside you fine fellows here.
Yeah, and also I think it's like, I think also a thing that we're doing, which I hope is true, and I think it's true, is also giving fodder for artists to begin to process of, making things like movies and art that are actually more historically oriented. And Andy, you'd be interested. I'm sure you could speak to this more than we could, but I think audiences in general are getting pretty like snobbish is not the right word, but they're like there's a much higher expectation. Savvy, yeah. They're really there's an expectation that if you're going to depict something from 1650, the rough better be right. Don't you can't muck with the raw, you can't muck it up. And there's an attention to detail that exists now that like I've heard this Napoleon movie that's coming out next week it's just going to get savaged by internet.
I was just going to bring that up
by 19-year-old internet guys.
By my friends. No, God bless them. But no, it's you're right. It's you can't get away with buckled hats and horned helmets anymore. That's for sure. But it's I mean, the Napoleon thing is a perfect example, right? I mean, it's an older director, and obviously Ridley Scott. I mean, my God, he's a master. Nobody can doubt his skill, his talent as a filmmaker, for sure. But he's a boomer. He's an older generation of filmmaker, and back during kind of not sort of heyday is the wrong word, because he's still doing great work, and a lot of people in that generation. I mean, I saw Killers of the Flower Moon. That's a masterpiece directed by an 80-year-old. Like, that generation is still doing a lot of great work. But I guess back during kind of Last of the Mohicans, Braveheart, Patriot, Gladiator days, and earlier, sort of the kind of new-fashioned, old-fashioned historical epics of kind of the late 20th century, early 21st century, people just didn't care, right? And filmmakers just didn't care, and they played very fast and loose. And that was a bit of a generational paradigm, I think, in historical fiction film. And 1492 Conquest of Paradise as well, which I rewatched recently, which is a ridiculous movie. It's utterly ridiculous, which is, very generous, because it is like also highly offensive. But my God, it's and it kind of, and it splits, all the bad things that Columbus did. They like assign that to Adrian de Moxica, this other character, and he's the one who's cutting off the hands, and Columbus is the humanist who's ahead of his time, the dreamer. But anyways, it's like that was acceptable, right? It just people just didn't really care, and I think. I'm not sure precisely necessarily what has changed. Maybe it's sort of the internet. Maybe it's kind of the cottage industry of YouTubers and stuff like that, who have kind of, and increased public history and stuff. And I think a lot of it also began with reenactors in particular, who were sort of picking apart costumes, inaccuracies in costumes. But no, people don't. I think there's, the zeitgeist has sort of shifted away from that, and I think you're starting to see sort of a younger generation of both filmmakers and audiences who are either more interested in historical accuracy, and making it quite painstaking, or just doing away with it entirely. Like there's this Hulu show, The Great, that ended this year or last year, I think, where it just doesn't even try to, it's about Catherine the Great, but it's explicitly like inaccurate, right? It's like part of the charm. Is or Bridgerton, which is I think The Great is for people who fuck, frankly. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can swear on your channel, Justin, but and Bridgerton is for the romantics. But yeah,
I remember the days of like the Battle of Stirling Bridge when there's no Stirling Bridge. What's gonna happen with the Battle of Austerlitz, I can only imagine. But Angela, is there any sort of like what would be some of your from the history of esotericism or modern esotericism, like what would be your like, what would you love to see put onto film? And Zevi, I would ask the same thing of you. Like what, you think about I can easily imagine a great movie about the, sort of 13th century Kabbalistic world and Alfonso the Great. And, but yeah, what, is there any sort of like
I'd love to see a movie on pagan witchcraft that is accurate.
Like pagan witchcraft from like the 20th century, or like from pre-Christian times?
No, I was thinking even contemporary times, like 20th century or 21st century. In terms of pagan witchcraft from the past, I think that you cannot even call it pagan witchcraft because it was so dispersed. I mean, it wasn't one thing. Even when you talk about the Roman religion, which was pagan, but it wasn't one thing. It was many different cults. So yeah, I mean, there was a time where it was described as religio romana, but it's not really one unified thing. It was a set of cults. So yeah, I think that I would love to see a movie on pagan witchcraft that is accurate, because they all, I mean, the very few that I know are not. So yeah, it would be interesting to see that. Sometimes you have glimpses of something that is interesting, like for instance The Law Witch. I don't know if you are familiar with that movie. It's aesthetically very beautiful, and there are some glimpses of rituals that are sort of Gardnerian type of rituals, and I find that movie interesting because to me, it also represents the struggle of women that women might have faced during that time. Because if you watch the movie, it looks like when she's engaging in certain rituals, especially the sexual elements, that she's not particularly happy. She looks like she's forced. And at the same time, you have these people saying, oh, but this is empowering for women. This is something that is liberating women. So I think that it's also a dichotomy that is also interesting from a feminist point of view. But more generally, I think that I would like to see a movie on pagan witchcraft, whether it be Wiccan or any other type of pagan witchcraft. But I can't really think of any movie on pagan witchcraft that is accurate. What
do you think of the 90s craft? Because they did bring on, for the 1990s craft, they did bring on practitioners to do some of the consulting for the movie, which I thought was pretty forward thinking for the late 90s, when they surely didn't have to do that.
Yeah, I think the first part was relatively accurate, but then the second part becomes a bit more out there. But yeah, the craft is definitely one that I like, but by the end of it still becomes quite sort of bombastic in the representations that are made compared to how magic works, or even the fact that they are levitating. They're making one of the girls levitating just with their hands. So, and also the representation of glamour magic as just changing yourself. I don't know, I think that there were things. I love that movie, so don't get me wrong, I love it. And there are definitely things that are quite accurate, but you also see the typical thing that you find in movie, that to make it interesting they have to exaggerate things.
Right. To make it a movie, they had to make it a movie. That's always the fate of many movies.
Well, and there's also a lot of.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask Zevi and Philip, movies. What would you guys want to see depicted in film that you haven't seen depicted in film?
I'd love to see those moments where Kabbalists try and bring down, the eternal power on the temporal power, whether it's Abulafia who tries, or Shlomo Malcha who tries to go to the Pope, or I think probably best would be Shabtai Tzvi and his encounter with the Sultan. Those moments, which are just those stories.
That would be amazing.
That would be. I mean, a Shabtai Tzvi movie would be. I think it could be a box office.
That would be. It would crush. It would kill. Yeah,
it would crush. And I mean, the inner drama and the sort of the urgings of their own, mental questioning and stability, and the spiritual yearnings, and the attempts to, and the growth of this young movement. I think that would be such a powerful psychological, religious, political. I mean, so many angles could be explored so beautifully through those stories. And the stories are so little known to a general public. I mean, you ask even a fairly educated Jew off the street, you ask them who Shlomo Malcha was, or Abulafia, or Shabtai Tzvi, and they just don't know who these names are. So that would be a great service, and I would watch the hell out of it.
Yeah. I can easily see a movie called The Messiah, and it's about Shabtai Tzvi. They would be. This is the culminating in the scene where basically, like the Sultan's behind your screen or whatever. And they're like, okay, like they bring in the archers. And they're like, all right, so either we're going to shield these arrows at you, or you can convert. That would be a great.
It would almost kind of be like a sort of an answer to. I could see it kind of playing out almost like a Mel Gibson movie, or like Brave at the end of Braveheart, where it's just like, just give in, just say it, and he's like, no, and he's like stays by his convictions to death and through torture, and then it's sort of set up to be like that, and then he just immediately converts. It's like, nope, I want to live. I want to live.
Yeah, that'd be the best way to do it. Is make no hesitation. Like, you convert, or we're gonna shoot arrows at you. Okay, I'm gonna convert.
I'm still waiting for that Rumi movie with Leo DiCaprio.
The which movie?
The movie about Rumi.
Oh, with Rumi, yeah.
A few years ago, it's going to star DiCaprio as Rumi, unless that was just a rumor. But I think that was like a real thing for a while. Which would have
Leonardo DiCaprio should definitely not play Rumi.
No.
That should not be. That should be a. Someone should. Yeah, that should not be a thing. Philip, any moments in history you like?
I don't know. I like the idea about, your suggestions, and Abulafia definitely would be an interesting character to portray. I'm trying to think within like the Islamic context or Sufism.
Oh, Halaj, I think would make a good movie.
Halaj, yes, that's a good. I was thinking Ghazali too could be interesting. Or I think you mentioned before, Justin, just like. There is one movie, but like Alexandria in the first few centuries AD, there was Agora, right? Which is,
Agora. Yeah, that tried. I think it did the best it could. In so many ways. And again, I'm never going to complain about Rachel Weisz being in ancient Alexandria. I'm like, okay, you had me at Rachel Weisz.
Just something about her in Egypt,
Rachel Weisz in Egypt. It's peak Weisz, mummy Weisz. But yeah, I felt like that movie was fine. People really they were angry about it, but I really did think that it depicted, especially the sort of Taliban-esque nature of the Christians at that time. I think that's an important corrective to history, to be like, oh yeah, they were not blessed. Blessed are the peacemakers. That was not their jam.
Well, and also something you talk about a lot, Justin, which is kind of the sort of the history of science, or kind of proto-science, right? About like this idea that it wasn't until, this idea of like, oh, until the Enlightenment, everyone was just sort of groping around in the dark and had no idea about anything, and thought that, there was ghosts in your blood, and, it was just this sort of like time of superstition in the infancy of our species, when in fact, no, these, the stuff that sort of what we call science, was sort of built on over millennia by like various discoveries, and people, yeah, they had a different sort of framework of how they sort of understood this stuff, but it wasn't, um, but yeah, to sort of just write them off as just these superstitious, primitives is ridiculous. I mean, I mean, Hypatia was a genius. Yeah,
if you look at the Mask of Tutankhamun, I always tell people, like, just look at the Mask of Tutankhamun, like, especially look at the back of it, and look at that mask and ask yourself, like, could a bunch of, like, there's nothing about that that's primitive. Every layer of the technology goes into making that mask, and that's like, New Kingdom Egypt. We're not even talking about, this is pre-alchemy. I'm like, it's such a bizarre, stupid belief that people have.
Well, I mean, obviously, the ancient Egyptians, I mean, if you have interstellar travel, then
of course, yes,
it was aliens. Of course, then yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that's always
it's totally right. Yeah.
So, but Angela, we should watch The Craft sometime and do like Andy and I have done a couple with The Witch, and Marco and Aaron have. We should watch The Craft together, because I will say that movie sparked a big interest in sort of witchcraft stuff when I was a teenager, and also the soundtrack to that movie is one of my favorite soundtracks.
I love it. Yeah.
It's a perfect encapsulation of like the late '90s and music. So, but yeah, we should watch it together, and
yeah,
I'd love to get your commentary, and love to also get like a practitioner so an older practitioner, someone in their 40s, also that grew up in that time period, to sort of get their glimpse about sort of what Wicca or what witchcraft looked like in the late '90s as opposed to now. Also have a lot of people that want to watch the Andy, I think you watched it recently too, The Ninth Gate.
Yeah.
Such a kitschy movie.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know if I loved some parts of it. I hated other parts of it. But I just immediately, I watched it at like 2 a.m, and you have kids, but I wanted to text you right away. But so I waited until the next morning. I was like, Justin, like, if you haven't seen this movie, it's got you written all over it. But no, it's really unique and weird and interesting. Neo-noir, devil worship, antiquarian books. And the art, the production design, of the books, like they're a little too neat. They're a little too kind of like in really good condition for 400-year-old books. But the actual sort of artwork, the woodcuts, the text, is like very well done. And yeah, Frank Langella plays a great villain in that. Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Yeah. It'd be kind of movie I'd love to see remade. It would definitely have that Roman Polanski. It was a 70s. It was directed as if it were a movie from the 70s, but made in the 90s or whatever. So it had some of the worst elements of both of those, and also I just prefer to have movies not made by Roman Polanski or whatever.
Exactly.
When I can stand it.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. Speaking of like the late 90s, early 2000s, or kind of, I guess, more sort of the 90s to 2000s. I mean, that was like a pretty important time in the history of magic, I would argue, just in terms of like the goth subculture kind of coming to the fore. And certainly we felt it in a big way where I live in New Orleans, with the sort of the vampire subculture that was here at that time. There was an enormous interest in Wicca, in Louisiana Voodoo here. A lot of people started to get a lot of, not necessarily people raised in the tradition, but just just normal kind of goths and Puerto Ricans, we call them, people who hang out in the French Quarter, leading bohemian lifestyles, got interested and found a lot of spiritual significance in Voodoo, and it was a very interesting kind of cultural time, I think, just for a lot of this stuff, right? Where a lot of these movies were coming out, and a lot of these subcultures were sort of making a serious sort of mark on the broader culture as well.
And I think also the leap to the internet. I mean, by the late 90s, the internet was like I remember seeing, and even the mid 90s, like Enochian stuff and alchemy stuff. Like that was a time period where people were connecting for the first time over broad distances with these really obscure interests. And they were like they're message boards and stuff where you could sign up and hang out with your vampire friends on the internet and drink red wine in front of your Trinitron screen or whatever vampires did in the late 90s. But yeah, that was a super interesting time. Lots going on at that time.
Yeah, I'm curious about like the intersection of of Wicca and sort of 20th century magic with like the New Age movement. Like Dr. Puka, do you know much about that? Has there been like any like cross pollination between those two sort of like subcultures at all?
That's a good question, and it is one that some scholars have also explored. So I think that there has been some cross-pollination, but Wicca has retained its own identity separate from the New Age movement, because the New Age movement tends to not be particularly, what's the term, religious. I mean, at least the cases that I'm thinking about when it comes to the New Age movement, if there is some type of religiosity, it leans more towards Christian mysticism, probably because New Agers tend to live in Christian-dominated countries. So my experience with Wiccan communities and pagan communities is that they use New Age as a derogatory term. So they would say that, they would hate the idea that there has been any cross-pollination at all. But looking at the inception and development of the New Age movement and characteristics of the Wiccan movement or other forms of contemporary paganism, I think that there has been some influence, but you can definitely not collate the two and see the two as the same, because the New Age movement has its own very specific characteristics. I also have a video on that. I should probably remake it because it's quite old, but and so it doesn't even get any attention anymore. But Wicca, and I also actually have a video on whether Wicca is New Age and the relationship between Wicca and New Age, now that I think about it. But yeah, the New Age movement, I think it is its own thing. It was very influenced by Theosophy, and the Theosophical movement has definitely influenced the New Age movement a lot, in my opinion. There are many things that you find in New Age movement that are straight from Theosophy, and people don't even know about it, like the Akashic records, astral traveling. I mean, people are convinced that the idea of the astral plane is, of course, the most ancient thing in the world, because if something is not the most ancient thing in the world, I don't even want to touch it. It's like, what's with people's obsession with things being the most ancient of the ancient? But yeah, other than that, the concept of the astral plane actually comes from a theosophist. So so you could say, oh, but this is something that has happened throughout history. Yes, but that's an out-of-body experience. The idea of astral traveling and the idea of the astral plane comes from theosophy. So that specific conceptualization is relatively recent. It comes from Leadbeater, actually, theosophy. So I think that many of the things that you find in the New Age movement stem from things like from traditions like Theosophy that are somewhat close to Christianity. They retain a link to Christianity, but at the same time they look elsewhere to get their answers. Like, for instance, there's a lot of influence from the Indian and Tibetan and Asian traditions in Theosophy, and you find the same thing in the New Age movement. So in my opinion, if we were to draw parallels to another tradition, I think that probably Theosophy is the one that I see the closest to the New Age movement. Even though it has developed in its own way. But if you look at some of the concepts that you find in the New Age movement, like the Akashic records, astral traveling, the idea of the spirit and the aura, these are all things that are were put into the cultural fabric by Theosophy. So
I think another great
that's absolutely
biopic,
fascinating. Yeah.
I mean, I think also another great biopic would be about Blavatsky. She's such a fascinating woman, that she doesn't like. It's such a bizarre story. Her, and she also really was a very daring, interesting person. I mean, she has obviously there's lots of worrying things about her as well, but another character in history that could easily use a biopic.
Yeah, I mean, I made a video a couple years ago about Ignatius Donnelly.
Oh yeah, what a loon!
And yeah, a total loon, but yeah, a very tragic kind of life story. I don't know. I mean, especially I kind of identify with him. It's just my own, I guess, my own politics, my own biases. He was just this very utopian idealist. And who kind of fought against the Gilded Age, and was this, and during the Civil War beforehand was a U.S. senator, for those who don't know, from Minnesota, and he. Yeah, and he'd be a staunch abolitionist, before and during the Civil War and stuff, and then broke with the Republican Party over their kind of getting in bed with capital and industry and stuff, and it's interesting that he then kind of he was this total loon who wrote a book about Atlantis, a couple books about Atlantis, and popularized a lot of those theories. The book, the Antediluvian World.
Basically, everyone who quotes Atlantis stuff goes quoting from him.
Yeah, I mean, as Graham Hancock is is in many ways kind of a disciple. He's kind of the most visible kind of modern Atlantean proponent, and very much a disciple of Donnelly's. But yeah, no, it's interesting to see how what I kind of explored in my video that I found very interesting was that it was kind of this was somebody who was very, toward the end of his life in like the 1880s and 90s, was very disillusioned with America, and the promise of America, and felt that it had kind of not lived up to its, stated principles, of truth and justice and free speech and, all that sort of great Revolutionary War stuff. And I don't know, to my mind, I think like him then sitting down toward the end of his life after having sort of failed in politics to bring about the change that he wanted to sort of establish this American utopia was essentially this claim that, or this sort of story about an empire sort of being punished for its sins, and being sort of laid low because of its hubris. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something very interesting. Obviously you don't want to necessarily, it's kind of dangerous to psychoanalyze people who have been dead for 100 years. But, at the same time, I feel like there is something there, right? It fits. It sort of makes sense that this person would go down this path, and really fixate on this Atlantis story and try to prove it,
Have you guys? As Zebi says, he might have to leave soon because of his battery and stuff, and also he's getting. Are you in the Holy Land already yet, Zebi?
I have made it back to the golden streets of the Holy Land.
Yeah, to Brooklyn, of course. Not just Brooklyn, Crown Heights.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So yeah, the real center of holiness there in Crown Heights.
Very much.
Philip, have you guys ever, or Angela, have you guys ever thought about making any like Atlantis content? I don't know. I've thought about it just like in passing because it's one of those places where I feel like there's a lot to be said about it because there's so much rubbish about Atlantis. That all the white people came from Atlantis, and that's where all the technology came from, and the Druids are all Atlanteans and all that. Or the kind of the racist stuff that comes out of Theosophy and Atlantis. Have you guys thought about, Philip? You thought about making any Atlantis content?
I've thought about it. Yeah.
You should totally do it, Angela. It would do well, I think.
It would.
Someone needs to do it. Someone needs to do it. That's not whatever.
Random person on the internet.
Yeah, random.
Yeah, we could name names, but we won't.
Yeah.
Well, there's a channel. There's a collaborator of mine, Dr. David Miano, he's got this channel, World of Antiquity, where he tackles a lot of that stuff, which is a really good resource. And I think it's fair to say if you if you enjoy ancient history and you care about, and just for people who are watching, if you enjoy ancient history and you care about sort of scholarly kind of responses to misinformation, kind of like we were talking about, I think you'll definitely appreciate his stuff. It's very good.
I mean, I think also just another way of tackling it would just be, and again, this is maybe something, I don't know, Philip, would be interesting, is just to think about the way that myth functions in Plato. That Plato uses myths to do all kinds of heavy lifting. I mean, Atlantis is just one of his myths. And I think in some sense, like the lesser interesting of them, I mean, the myth of at the very end of the Republic. I mean, I don't think that heaven and hell develop without the myth of I think the Christian conceptions of how heaven and hell are structured and what happens there at some level, people look to Zoroastrianism, and I think it's not so much Zoroastrianism. I think it's the myth of I think that is functioning, doing way more heavy lifting in nascent Christianity in terms of what people are reading. Of course, the Republic was just required. Everyone read it. And it would just be interesting to think about, or like the other myths, right? The myth of the metals, which is also in the Republic, and just how it must have been scandalous. I mean, I always think about this moment. Socrates is executed for aceibia, for being for impiety or whatever how you want to translate aceibia. And then Plato comes along later and just is like, yeah, we're going to edit the myths to make them to make the gods look good, and we're going to invent myths to like make a utopia work. It must have been scandalous in ancient Athens for Plato to come along and say, you know what, the myths just aren't good enough. We gotta change those. It'd be the equivalent of, I don't know, Martha Nussbaum or some other contemporary philosophers being like, yeah, the Bible, what about that? Let's edit that. Or the Quran or something. Be like, yeah, those sections about slavery. We can get rid of those. The gods don't really like that. I don't know. It would be, I think of how scandalous it must have been, and just the way that myth functions in Plato. I don't know. That'd be an interesting episode, I think.
There's crazy stuff going on in Plato. I was just reading the Phaedo like a few weeks ago, and like that account at the end, where he's like, he's like, now Socrates says like, I'm gonna stop philosophizing now, and he just goes off in this insane vision of these different earths and stuff, and
the vision of
stuff influenced. I think that's something I want to tackle more, is like the impact on Platonism generally on all the Abrahamic religions and their theologies and so on. Because there's, like you say, I haven't thought about that particular connection between the myth of and heaven and hell, but like there's plenty of stuff like that could be explored.
Yeah,
I think that there's always more than one influence. There are always multiple influences, and sometimes the question is more about what has been the most influential, but there's always multiple streams that affect a new idea. So I think that the myth of is quite likely one of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny that you never hear about it. I don't know, despite the fact that it's sort of the crowning moment at the very end of the Republic, that Atlantis, that myth, but you never also hear about the other invented cities that Plato invented, like Lemuria and Ur. Like those are also like other made up.
It's quite talked about, yeah.
Yeah, it's talked about, but it's not nearly. It doesn't have the showcase of Atlantis. There's like a theme park in the Caribbean that's called Atlantis. You can go there, swim around or whatever. But yeah, no, Lemuria, it doesn't get the play, or the myth of you often don't hear it gets the play. But I don't know. I just find it interesting which of these myths get picked up and which ones don't. And the fact that Atlantis really got picked up by the New Age movement, or like the Akashic records and stuff, like stuff underneath the Sphinx, like how that just became such a big idea that there's like this chambers beneath. Yeah, Theosophy. Yeah, it's just Theosophy that there are these chambers beneath the Sphinx, and like all this pseudoscience has come along with Egyptomania.
I mean, even contemporary time, Theosophy stuff been very openly no-vaxxers. So yeah, I think that they kind of have certain, I mean, the theosophical philosophy is very interesting, and it was definitely very influential in many branches of esoteric thought in the 20th century. But of course, there are also controversial elements like the relationship with science and medicine, I think, would be one.
Right. This is a question I should answer really fast. I see it on there. The print or electronic record of Hildegard of Bingen's exorcism ritual. Yes, it's in her letters. You have to go get a copy of her letters. I think there's a 3-volume edition of her letters. The exorcism ritual is in her letters. That allegedly that God revealed to her. I got to do more Hildegard content.
I love Hildegard.
Man, what a boss. She must have just been an absolutely incredible woman that she was able to do the things that she did. I mean, I think about her, like her and her sisters just out in the middle of Germany, like building a nunnery from scratch in the middle of basically nowhere. She must have just been just tough as nails. I don't know. It's just really an amazing woman.
Inventing a language.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's another episode I want to remake is the Lingua Ignota and the music that she wrote and how weird it is.
Mm-hmm. There's like a Hildegard pilgrimage trial in Germany, I think. And when we were going to Amsterdam this summer, I was planning to like try to have time to do that before I came to the Netherlands, but sadly there was no time. But I would love to do that sometime, just see those places or what's left of them.
Yeah, I mean, Regensburg is huge. If you ever like, I've seen pictures of the monastery that what is there now. I mean, but it's like a fortress. We often forget that these monasteries and nunneries were basically giant plantations. They were fortresses as much as they were anything else. Yeah, when you see some of the ruins of some of these places where bishops lived, they're just palaces, really spectacular buildings. But
yeah, unfortunately, I've never been to Germany. I would love to go.
Yeah, I've only been to like very far Western Germany once on a day trip from the Netherlands. But yeah, I might be going next year. Folks know Dr. Kirsten Switzer, does Ancient Magic YouTube channel.
The one on the Greek Magical Papyri?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does a lot of work on the Greek Magical Papyri. She's having a conference on, I think, Ancient Magic next year in Germany, and she wants me to come. It would be a great excuse to get over to Germany. I was invited to the Occulture conference, but it's just like a weekend, and I can't justify getting on a plane.
I was
flying. Yeah, I was like, I'd love to do it, but I'm not. Unless you're gonna throw some money at getting airfare or something, I can't just randomly fly to Berlin.
Yeah, it has to be part of a bigger trip. Yeah, to really justify that.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, it's not that I don't want to do it, but it would be a lot of work. Angela, are you ever planning to come to the AAR, like the ARSPL?
So no, unfortunately, I'm not coming, but I will still be presenting in the Pagan Studies unit. But actually, at first, I thought I would have to pull out because my paper was accepted, but I cannot come to San Antonio this month. So I thought I would, that I would just have to pull out. But then the chair reached out and asked me whether I'd be willing to do it online. So I accepted that. So that's nice. But unfortunately, I'm not going to make it. I hope next year. I always want to go to the AR, but every time there's some type of problem. And this time is in San Antonio, Texas. I know that many scholars that I'd like to encounter will not be going to this conference for political reasons. And also it's very difficult to get to San Antonio. So yeah, for those reasons, I decided not to. And also I've been traveling quite a lot this year, so I have a bit of travel fatigue, to be honest. So
do you know where it is next year?
Is it in Philadelphia or am I making it up?
I mean, if it's on the East Coast, I'll go. I'm not going to go to the West Coast. I'm very biased.
Are you guys coming to Gothenburg next year for is it the EASR that's there?
EASR. Isn't it in 2025?
Maybe you're right.
Because it's every 2 years. And the last two occasions, it was 1 year after the other because of the pandemic. but otherwise it tends to be biannual, so every 2 years. So it's probably 2025. But yes, I would be coming to that one.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I'll make it. I am going to the Necronomicon next year in
Well,
Providence.
Nice.
of course you're going to the Necronomicon.
It's fun. It's funny because they have like an academic component where it's like Lovecraft scholarship, and also just like my not so secret desire to move to Providence. Like I'm like
It's a great town.
yeah, I just want to live in Rhode Island. I have this very weird romantic view of Rhode Island. So
if I may ask, as a New Englander, why?
I don't know. I guess I associate it with like religious dissidents and
Roger Williams. Yeah.
Roger Williams is there. The Quakers were there. Like the first synagogue. The Torah synagogue is there. And, and so I don't know. I mean, also I think that there's like the Rhode Islanders were like they were the last to sign on to the Constitution until there was like a guarantee for right of religious, like the religious liberties stuff, and they were like, no, we're going to hold out to the very end, and I don't know. So I always like they're also little. I like Rhode Island. It's like a little, it's the littlest of the states. I think they have a neat history.
No, it is. Rhode Island is great. Providence specifically is a really great town. I have some friends who I met here who lived here in New Orleans for many years who just moved there. So I'm excited to kind of visit them more and go back. But yeah, and there's a lot to it as well. I mean, there's like Newport is very posh and has all these historic mansions and stuff that you can tour and
crazy mansions. I mean, also it's like so historically accurate that when they filmed Amistad, they just covered the streets with sand and shot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's a lot of sort of the rural areas, like there's natural beauty as well. Actually, one time fairly recently, so when so I've made a video about this, and I've mentioned it several times because it's incredibly important to kind of one of my main areas of study, King Philip's War. But the Great Swamp Fight / the Great Swamp Massacre was an enormous, incredibly bloody event that happened in December of 1675, the bloodiest day of King Philip's War, which is when the English colonies of New England basically broke the political power and committed genocide against many of the Native American nations of the region. And that was basically where the Narragansetts got massacred in the hundreds by colonial militia. And I visited the site many times just by car, just driving down 95 there. And then I was taking a train to New York fairly recently. I think it was like last summer or something, from Boston. And just piddling around on Google Maps for whatever reason. And I noticed that the train tracks literally go right over the battlefield, right over the massacre site, within maybe 100 yards or less from the monument, which is where sort of they thought in the early 20th century that the fort that was burned down by colonial troops. But that whole area is actually quite beautiful. There's not much of the Great Swamp left, unfortunately. It's just kind of a town. But yeah, a lot of natural beauty as well, and the coastline is really beautiful. It's a good spot. It's a good spot.
Yeah, the mansions are just shocking when you go to the walk along the. Like I don't know if you guys know this, Angela and Philip, like all the big Gilded Age families, like the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and all those, they built basically winter homes, summer homes in Rhode Island, and it's shocking. Like some of these homes are, I mean, I say homes, they're massive mansions,
palaces.
Really palaces. I mean, they're the kind of thing that only crazy rich Americans would build. But what's also one thing I learned about them that was really crazy was that many of them had no heat because they were just summer homes. So they built no heating system into them, and they had to retrofit them later to actually make them heated, so that you actually could live in them in the wintertime. And just to get the idea of like that you could have a staff of 70 people living in a house full time, so you could visit there for 4 months out of the year. it boggles the mind. Like,
I mean,
how
if
rich.
that, you know what I mean? You kind of imagine, right? It's like, it's easy to imagine one of these families just kind of coming, for a weekend,
Yeah.
or coming for a day out of a planned, they might plan to come for a few months, but then, urgent business takes them back to the city, or maybe they don't like the weather, or maybe there's some family drama and they leave in a huff, or, you know what I mean? And
It's crazy.
these insane palaces. I have to say, the last time that I visited Newport and went on a tour, I kind of just had this face just on the whole time. Just the obscene display of wealth. I
love that
really
stuff.
bothered me.
I'm a complete sucker for that stuff. I love like a Downton Abbey and like the Gilded Age and all it's like as a Marxist, I deeply hate the bourgeoisie, but I'm also like secretly in love with the aristocrats. I'm like, I don't aspire to be a member of the bourgeoisie. I secretly aspire to be
an aristocrat.
An aristocrat, like landed gentry. So rich you'd get C's at Oxford. Like, no. Couldn't work too hard. No, complete hypocrite when it comes to my tastes. Like, no, I don't want to be nouveau riche. I want to like, decadent old rich.
Well, and speaking of kind of new age stuff, I was thinking about one of the things you said in, I don't know, some video. I know we've talked about this just, in person, Justin, but the idea of Marxism as an apocalyptic cult, I think is such a wonderful, I've never been able to think about it the same way since.
That's all it is.
And I kind of, and I was thinking a lot about sort of in connection to the New Age movement as well, especially with like the 2012 stuff. The sort of apocalypticism there has really caught my imagination recently. There's a lot of there's a lot of recordings, endless recordings, it seems, on YouTube of Terence McKenna lectures where he's kind of in the 80s and 90s furthering the 2012 sort of apocalypticism, and I find it just so interesting, right? Just this idea that things have to be, it can't all just be chaos. Everything needs to be sort of converging on this central point of, the second coming or the revolution or, 2012, or the singularity or whatever. It's just such a wonderfully interesting sort of psychological phenomenon, and I recognize it in myself. You know what I mean? I have utopian aspirations, and it's also an interesting bit of self-reflection as well. It's like kind of, do I think like that?
No, I think that the apocalyptic stuff. I mean, I think I've made this point in an episode, maybe in my Kabbalah series, talking about how that apocalypticism is probably the most influential concept to come out of like the axial age. That and it's just the most narcissistic concept. Like we are the generations that will end it all. We're the ones that turn the lights off or whatever. I just love how completely narcissistic it is. Just like
and we kind of, and this is, I also kind of recognize it as well let me preface this by saying climate change is real. It's happening and it's human caused, right? The climate crisis is happening and we are undergoing it now. And it is really, it's beyond doubt, right? That it is happening. The psychological sort of thing at play in a lot of people that I see in my generation, like middle-class sort of Westerners, is very interesting because there is a bit of this sense of, I mean, the climate crisis is bad and it will continue to be bad. Is it going to be the end of the species? No, probably not. Hopefully not. But the way that a lot of, I think, middle-class Westerners sort of think about it, it sort of might as well be, I think there's sort of apocalyptic elements in the way that
it's not just that, it's apocalyptic fantasies. Like, again, and I think Angela said she might have to leave soon as her battery has to go. But yeah, I mean, I've always looked at the zombie apocalypse stuff, the Mad Max stuff, all the post-apocalyptic stuff. I really buy the read on that it's a fantasy, that we all know that it sucks and we want to see it happen. We're enjoying, and I have to say there myself, any post-apocalyptic movie, I just take extreme joy in watching whole cities get wiped out.
I hate it.
I love that.
Oh, really?
Angela,
Of course you do.
No, I'm a sparkly ghost, so I actually don't know how to say that.
Yeah, I mean, and Angela, you've also done some things about sort of apocalypticism in the pagan world and how that's how these very Abrahamic ideas make their way into religions that are ostensibly very anti-Abrahamic or whatever. And it's interesting that you get these that apocalypticism has made its way all the way into other spaces.
I was asked to write an entry into the Cambridge Dictionary about it because they don't have anything about pagan apocalypticism, and I gave a talk at Cambridge University on that. So,
Nice.
yeah, I think that probably the calling it apocalypse in a Christian term is possibly inaccurate, but it's more their vision of the end time or what
Right,
is going
eschatology.
in that sense, but it's very material. It's very much based on what is going on in the world. For instance, the climate change that was mentioned, and the pandemic, and then you have these fringe pagan groups like the hidden preppers and pagan survivalists who focus on getting back the skills of our ancestors in case there's a cataclysm and you need to grow your own food and do everything by yourself. So you need to be very crafty and acquire all the skills that might be needed in the case of an apocalypse. So I think
that's definitely how the ancestors did it.
Yeah, but I think that in paganism, first of all, it's a very fringe movement. It's not what pagans normally believe, so it needs to be said that it's something quite fringe within paganism. But still, I think that it's interesting because even in those occasions, you don't have a sense of a metaphysical apocalypse with gods that are sort of manifesting their wrath upon you. It's more physical. It's more about, we have detached from nature, and so that's what's going to happen because human beings are not particularly in line with nature, and we are destroying the planet in the sense that we are not making it livable for us because we are not destroying the planet. I mean,
so we're going to be punished for it. So divine punishment will come upon us.
No, it's not a matter of divine punishment. It's just a matter of the physical consequences of actions. So, but yeah, it's also not a sense of, even though there are some pagans that depict the problems like the climate crisis as, there are also some comics that you find on social media and the internet of Mother Earth that tries to embrace a child, which is a person, to say, why don't you get in contact with me? I understand that this is a problem. But there's also a sense in that it's not really the case that human beings are damaging the planet, because the planet can live just fine without us when we are all extinct. It's more that there's a problem with making the planet unlivable for us rather than destroying the planet. The planet is not something that we can easily destroy, to my knowledge.
Well, it's not so much the planet will destroy; it's just the extinction event we're causing. That basically,
exactly.
Right. We're causing
biomass. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So it's more like messing up with the balance of the ecosystems to the point where the planet becomes unlivable for us, rather than destroying nature. Because if humankind were to disappear, nature would completely have a rebirth in their own way in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, we have that in Detroit.
Yeah. You do for sure.
Yeah, we have. I've seen that. It is us.
Before I disappear, guys.
Oh yeah, sorry, you have to go.
Rather that I leave because my battery is running out, and I do have a charger, but unfortunately, it's not powerful because my battery is still dropping. Anyway, congratulations again, Justin. So
thank you, Angela.
Before I disappear, at least I give you a proper farewell for now.
I appreciate that. Also, have a good time tomorrow at the
Witch
Fest. Yeah, hope you enjoy it.
Oh, fun.
Imagine the English do that well.
yeah, we will see. It seems like it's a big event, and I'm gonna speak like in a big theater, so stage fright a little bit, but I will be recording it so people can watch it on my YouTube channel next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, what a sweet gig! Congratulations.
Thank you.
Philip, what do you think about the apocalyptic stuff? Do you like do you like these kinds of I don't know, these kind of zombie apocalypse stuff or any sort of the apocalypse stuff? Is that
I've
and
always
it's also
enjoyed the genre in terms of films and stuff.
have you done any content on on the Dajjal or
No, I've done some like I've covered the topic in related subjects, like the Baha'i faith comes from a sort of millennialist apocalyptic movement. But no, I haven't really covered that too much. But it's interesting because there is a lot of that kind of talk. I see right now, like on social media, on YouTube, there's plenty of like Muslim figures who are talking about the fact that the Dajjal is on his way and this is the end times because morality in the world is plummeting, as if that isn't always the case.
Right, yeah.
I see that very commonly now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just to cover that stuff.
Yeah.
Because yeah, sort of Muslim, like Islamic eschatology is like really like the moon's gonna break in half. Is that a thing that happens? The moon breaks in half, and the Dajjal is like he has one eye. Like the Dajjal is like, I don't know, Andy, if you know this, is like he's like the Islamic Antichrist. And so there's like an entire genre of sort of Islamic Antichrist. You know, there could be the Islamic version of the Omen. But do they think the Dajjal exists now? Is like already on the.
I've seen some people like theorize about like political figures, like maybe he's the one. I think Trump was one of them.
Trump could be the Dajjal. Netanyahu. I'm going to say Netanyahu.
Yeah,
I'm sure
there is a bit of a. I think there is a bit of a certainly. I guess going off of the climate change thing, I think Trump has achieved Antichrist status in a certain sort of apocalyptic millenarian tradition in the middle class, apocalypticism.
Yeah.
And he sucks, but yeah.
Yeah, this is also a thing I want to cover at some point too. It's like is the Enochian stuff. People love all the angel language stuff that goes on with John D. and Kelly, but really the entire point of all that was like the end of the world. Man, it's so much wrapped up in the end of the world and sort of the socio-political stuff that would precipitate in the end. And I feel like that stuff gets papered over because people are like, oh, I want to summon angels to get a girlfriend, as opposed to like, I want to summon the angels to start the apocalypse. People need to dream bigger, I think. People need to if you're gonna dream big, like if you're gonna dream big.
Yeah, that's a movie right there. Is a Twitter accelerationist summoning demons to start the apocalypse. That'd be a tight little 90-minute Shudder original.
That's hilarious. Philip, what do you got planned? What do you got coming up? What's on the agenda before we wrap up? I gotta go do some dinner with folks
about the Assassin's Creed stuff.
I saw this, yeah.
Recent video game that came out that takes place in Baghdad in the 9th century. So I've been making these short sort of biographies of different characters that are featured in the game. I might do like a big review, like of the historical accuracy and that stuff. We'll see. Other than that, I'm working currently on my video about Jewish mysticism. I think I finished the script today, possibly.
No, I need to get you my part about that.
There's no rush. I'm looking forward to seeing your contribution. And then I don't know. I also took kind of a break after the whole Halloween.
Yeah,
I did so many videos there, and that's when I took a break from video making a little bit. I did work on those short ones, but they were relatively painless to make. So I have to sort of catch up, like to my own schedule a bit now. But it's the Jewish mysticism one. Might do another one on one of the non-canonical gospels, maybe the Gospel of Philip. I'm thinking
it's a good name one.
Yes, that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah. The Gospel of Philip also has the most important lacuna in any gospel. Like there's a gap in the manuscript where it says, "And Jesus kissed her on the," and there's a gap.
Oh yeah.
And and like
Scandal.
we don't know like where Jesus kissed Mary Magdalene, but
I'm using my imagination and
you can- yeah,
I'm
you
coming
can-
up with
hey.
all sorts of things. I'm,
but
yeah, that's where brackets are necessary, right? It's
yeah, it's where you have the
brackets.
the
You can add
bracket,
anything.
and typically they add in mouth. That's typically what gets added in. But
Mm.
yeah, the truth be told, if you actually look at the manuscript, there is a gap, a literal gap in the manuscript.
So fascinating.
Yeah, so the Gospel of Philip
Yeah.
has one of the most interesting gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's important to take a break, Philip. It's this, especially after. I mean, it's busy time for you guys in Halloween. I mean, I saw Justin was doing. I'm behind on my esoterica content, Justin, because I was, as you know, I was enjoying that island life. I was on vacation, but yeah, no, it's so important to take a break and step away from this stuff, because it's the algorithm wants us to churn it out regularly, but
Yeah,
that's our brains and our bodies maybe disagree.
right. It's not good for us to be like that. But yeah, what about you, Andy? You got anything coming down the pike in terms of YouTube content? I know that.
Oh man, yeah. Always. I also am taking a break right now. I got married last month, and so I'm not doing anything. Thank you. Not doing anything until Christmas, pretty much, because and I've got a series that I'm working on called The Birth of an American Town, which is about my hometown, the first 50 years of my hometown's history. After it was founded, not the actual land. But I ran out of footage up in Massachusetts, so I need to get back up there and do that. I'm continuing my series on famous abolitionists. I have actually just came at this is a fairly new thing, but it's a book about the Green Scare, and I'm going to probably interview a few people from the sort of 90s and 2000s who got prosecuted under the 2000s got prosecuted under the Patriot Act for property damage, essentially as terrorists, which is a really interesting and pretty infuriating story. And I just happen to have my books right here. And speaking of apocalypticism, I showed Justin this. I got the Prophecies, edited by Christopher Columbus, and been on a bit of a Columbus kick. So I think I'm going to do something about that maybe early next year. I'm really enjoying this so far, and it's got that great sort of like side by side, English to Latin translation, which is fun, and Spanish, because there's a little bit of Spanish. Right. And then Checkmate Lincolnites, the finale, which is going to be a giant pain in the neck and take months, but that's what I'm doing early next year. It's the last episode of Checkmate Lincolnites. It's going to be
end of an era.
End of a very stupid,
I'm sure you're also glad to be
insignificant era. I'm very glad, Justin. I can't even tell you how glad I am to end that chapter of my life.
Sometimes the very things that make us like popular also are like, yeah, I'm done with that. Like, can you imagine with the kids on Stranger Things, or how they must feel about Stranger Things? Then we're like, I am done with this. I'm like Millie Bobby Brown's like, I am not. I'm done with being 11.
But I'm also just a huge snob, as you know very well, Justin. A gigantic slob. Talk about bourgeoisie, and just a huge hipster, and generally, just adverse reaction to the popular thing. But no, it's. I think I'm ready to move on to a different sort of phase of my work. But no, for sure. But at the same time, this is a very good problem to have, right? Like we're very lucky to be able to have the audiences that we have, and be able to do what we do. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me, and a little celebration for this. For these funny numbers that we get we get so excited about. I think again that I think we were saying this earlier that for me, and I have to say for myself that one of the greatest things that come out of this whole experience is getting to meet folks like y'all and forge these cool new friendships. And that's really been such a boon in terms of this whole YouTube gig. And yeah, it's great to know you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Phil, great to meet you. And again, huge fan. And yeah, Justin, congratulations, dude. You deserve it. You've worked so hard, and you found this amazing audience who are into all this weird stuff, you know, and you know, and you really tapped into, you filled a need that needed to be filled, and you're doing it with such class. And I know I tell you all the time how much of a big fan I am of yours, but, you know, can't tell you enough, you know, because it's, you did such amazing work, and yeah, you deserve it. Could not happen to a finer scholar or a cooler dude. So congrats, dude.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And also I just want to say, I want to express appreciation for all the folks that left super chats and all the super thanks and stuff in the chats. I really appreciate that. I'll try to go back through and look at some of the questions and do like a proper Q&A soon. So I weren't really able to do it today, but let's see. Someone nice. Okay, so go ahead. Okay, nice. Yeah, thank you. But yeah, all right, folks. Well, I'm gonna be back in the saddle next week for this episode on the Salem witch trials, or at least what happened after them. I don't know if I mentioned I'm going to do an episode on the one I was telling you about, of sort of what happened to Abigail Williams and Tituba, and the sort of afterlife of what happens to these women and girls. So that'll be next week for my bizarre interest in colonial American occultism that I think we share. So
yeah, I'm right there with you, dude. Yeah, no, that's great for the holiday too.
True.
As well. And yeah, for sure. No, I'm looking forward to that with great excitement. So Sal, my dog, is freaking out, screaming like he's being murdered. So I'm going to hop off and see what's wrong with him. But again, congrats, Justin. It's lovely to meet you, Philip.
Yep. You guys take it easy. Philip, let's be in touch, and let me know when you want me to get that Merkava stuff to you, and then I'll get that written up soon.
Sure.
But, all right. Well, have a great night. Send my best to the wife. Tell her thinking about her, miss her. She's such a great person. And everybody in the chat, thank you so much, and thank everyone for supporting the channel and making this possible. You guys really are the reason why all this is possible, and I'm really thankful for the fans the channel has and for the community we've managed to build up around this material. It really means a ton to me, and I just want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I really mean it. It's just so deeply thankful. Thank you. All right, folks, I'm going to log off. I'll see you folks next week for some new esoteric content. And other than that, I'll see folks soon. Take it easy.
Bye, everyone.